There's a man whose signature exists in almost every major city in the world. The cars you drive, the bridges you cross, the train tracks you travel on, and the skyscrapers you see all carry the mark of his company. Yet there's a good chance you've never heard his name. He isn't a billionaire constantly appearing on screens like tech CEOs. He doesn't chase headlines or show off on social media. Instead, he quietly built and controlled the largest steel empire in the world. So how did a boy working in a small steel factory in India become one of the most powerful industrial leaders on Earth? How did he buy failing factories and turn them into a global empire worth billions? And why did he eventually have to separate from his own family? In this video, we'll explore how Lakshmi Mittal built his steel empire from nothing, the ruthless efficiency strategies he used, his massive acquisitions from Eastern Europe to Kazakhstan, and how ArcelorMittal became the largest steel company in the world. Because this story is not just about the rise of a billionaire, it's about how modern industrial power is built. ArcelorMittal operates in 15 countries, serves customers in 129 countries, and manages around 310,000 employees. Despite this massive influence, Mittal has remained largely invisible to the public. No flashy interviews, no constant media appearances. Mittal's story is remarkable because he didn't inherit an empire. He built it from scratch by doing the exact opposite of what people told him to do. He challenged governments, outsmarted bureaucracy, and eventually even separated from his own family to follow a vision that nobody believed in. To understand the scale of the power Mittal controls today, you first need to understand the size of his company. As mentioned earlier, Lakshmi Mittal leads ArcelorMittal, the largest steel producer in the world. The company operates on a gigantic scale. It runs steel production facilities in 15 countries, while its customer network spreads across 129 countries. It also controls the entire steel value chain, meaning it manages every stage of production. Everything begins with mining raw materials like iron ore and coal. These materials are then transformed into steel. After that, the steel is processed into sheets, beams, and wires. Finally, these products are delivered to factories, construction companies, and industries all over the world. The company powers global transportation. It produces steel used in cars, trains, and transportation networks. It also shapes the construction industry, supplying materials for buildings, ports, power plants, and massive infrastructure projects. Mittal's company employs more than 310,000 people. But to reach this level of success, he had to go against his family, his mentors, and the expectations of India's traditional industrial class. He chose not to follow the rules everyone else accepted. Lakshmi Mittal was born in 1950 in a small town in India. At the time, India had only recently gained independence from nearly 2 centuries of British colonial rule in 1947. Poverty was widespread. Industry was weak, and opportunities for ambitious young people were extremely limited. The real middle class was still very small, but it had big dreams. Education, discipline, and ambition were everything. Many of India's future industrial leaders would emerge from this environment, and Lakshmi would become one of them. His father owned a steel factory, and Lakshmi worked there after school. He watched the furnaces, observed negotiations, and learned everything he could about steel production. He also had an extraordinary talent for finance. Numbers came naturally to him. At university, he achieved the highest grades in the school's history in accounting and commercial mathematics. His principal was so impressed that he offered Mittal a teaching position the day he graduated. But Mittal had much bigger plans. He dreamed of building an empire. Unfortunately, that was almost impossible in India at the time. The country operated under a heavily controlled system known as the License Raj. The government decided what companies could produce, how much they could produce, and even the prices at which products could be sold. Because of this, connections mattered more than talent. Without the right network or wealthy background, building a large business was nearly impossible. For Mittal, this environment felt suffocating. He knew that if he wanted to build something truly massive, he had to leave India. Then an unexpected opportunity appeared. At the time, his family was exploring business opportunities in Indonesia. They planned to buy rice fields and build a steel factory. But the project failed because the necessary permits were denied. The factory was never connected to electricity. Lakshmi Mittal was sent to Indonesia to sell the land and return with the money. but he had different plans. When he arrived, he refused to sell the land. Instead, he began studying the market and creating plans to revive the steel project his family had abandoned. The problem was simple. Mittal had no money. India's strict currency controls prevented citizens from moving money overseas. But Mittal quickly found a solution. He realized that the Indian government allowed overseas investments through exports. This meant he could buy machinery and equipment in India, export them to Indonesia, and receive government-backed loans covering up to 85% of the cost. It was completely legal and extremely clever. Now, he only needed to convince the Indonesian government. Mittal promised technology transfer and job creation to Indonesian officials. Eventually, he secured the permits and electricity access. That's how PT Ispat Indo was officially born. This was a greenfield steel plant built completely from scratch. There were no old systems, no outdated workers, and no inefficient structures. Everything was under Mittal's control. For the next decade, he perfected operational management. He improved efficiency, reduced waste, and transformed an abandoned project into a profitable industrial machine. But soon he faced another problem. Being efficient did not mean becoming big. The factory produced around 330,000 tons per year, while global steel giants produced millions of tons. The problem wasn't the factory itself. The real problem was the supply chain. Building new factories meant building new logistics systems, transportation networks, and entirely new markets from the ground up. So Mittal chose a different strategy. Instead of building from zero, he decided to buy failing factories and make them efficient again. The timing was perfect because the steel industry was in serious decline at the time. Many factories were being sold for prices far below their construction cost. Mittal saw something others didn't. Scale would come not from building new factories, but from acquisitions. In 1989, he targeted a nearly bankrupt steel plant in Trinidad and Tobago. The factory was government-owned and losing huge amounts of money. Mittal made a simple offer. He would make the factory profitable. He would increase production, cut costs, and motivate workers. In return, he wanted the option to buy the factory later at a favorable price. The government was desperate and accepted the deal. Mittal immediately began restructuring operations. He fired expensive foreign managers and brought in 60 managers from India. The new team was far cheaper, but worked much harder. For employees, the strategy was extremely demanding. The managers became known for long and exhausting work hours. But this was exactly what Mittal wanted: ruthless efficiency at any cost. Within a year, production doubled. The factory became profitable, and 5 years later, Mittal fully acquired the plant. This became his standard operating strategy: replace management, set aggressive targets, eliminate unnecessary spending, then buy the company. At the same time, the communist world was collapsing. Mittal now had access to global financing and began hunting failing steel factories across Eastern Europe. He acquired factories in Romania, Poland, and the Czech Republic. Financial institutions such as HSBC, Credit Suisse, and the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development financed his expansion. He managed to make almost all of them profitable again. But not everything went smoothly. India's economy was beginning to liberalize. Entrepreneurs now had more freedom. And in 1995, Mittal entered a major conflict with his own family. His father and brother wanted the family business to focus on India. They expected Lakshmi to abandon the international operations he had built. But Mittal refused. He wanted to build a global steel empire. His family saw this as betrayal. Mittal believed they simply weren't thinking big enough. And from that moment on, he never looked back. His acquisition of the Temirtau steel plant in Kazakhstan became his biggest gamble. The plant had once been the center of Soviet steel production, but it was now collapsing. Workers were unpaid. Heating systems had failed. The mines were dangerous. Everyone thought it was a disaster waiting to happen. The Wall Street Journal even described the investment as Mittal's Waterloo. But once again, Mittal proved them wrong. He used the same strategy: bring in Indian managers, pay workers in cash, eliminate Soviet-era inefficiencies, restore heating systems, and restart public transportation. Within a year, production doubled. The plant became one of his largest and most profitable operations. In 2004, he merged the companies he controlled: Ispat International, L&M Holdings, an international steel group. The result was Mittal Steel. 2 years later, the company merged with Arcelor, one of Europe's largest steel producers. The new company became ArcelorMittal, the largest steel producer in history. Today, Lakshmi Mittal focuses more on philanthropy. He has donated large amounts to Harvard University, UNICEF, and educational projects around the world. At the same time, ArcelorMittal has invested in new steel production technologies designed to reduce energy consumption and carbon emissions. However, criticism continues. The company has faced multiple lawsuits related to environmental pollution. Mittal's close relationships with governments have also raised concerns about the influence billionaires hold over politics and the global economy. Even though Lakshmi Mittal is not as famous as Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos, his legacy still exists in the cities, factories, and steel structures that keep the modern world standing. One of the biggest lessons from this story may be this: don't wait for opportunities to come to you. Move the moment you recognize them. But it's also important to think critically. Yes, Mittal saved many factories and built enormous economic success. But he often achieved this through harsh working conditions, environmental damage, and an extremely aggressive management style. Great success rarely comes without major costs,